Okay, good evening everyone and welcome to the Environment and Planning Committee for Tuesday 13th of June 2023. I'll declare the meeting open at 7 p.m. I'd like to start by acknowledging the Bidjigal people of the Eora Nation, the traditional custodians of lands, waters and sky in the Georges River area. I'd also like to pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging, and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples who live, work and meet on these lands. Always was, always will be. Apologies. I have an apology from Councillors Borg and Jamieson. Are there any other apologies? It doesn't look like there are. Could I please have a motion to accept their apologies and grant a leave of absence? Moved by Councillor Marnie and seconded by Councillor Ambi Haperha. Okay, all those in favour? We'll declare that carried. And we also have a request for Councillor Wang to join the meeting via audio-visual link tonight. So Councillor Wang is online now, I believe. So could I please have a mover and a seconder for that as well? Moved by Councillor Ambi Haperha and seconded by Councillor Marnie. Thank you very much. Okay. Right. Oh, sorry. I thought we put that to a vote. All those in favour? Anyone against? Okay, carried, sorry. Getting ahead of myself. Now, our notice of live streaming of the committee meeting, our staff and public are reminded that this meeting is being recorded for minute-taking purposes and it's also being webcast live on Council's website. In accordance with Section 5 of Council's Code of Meeting Practice, this recording will be made available on Council's website. The Code of Meeting Practice. The order of business is as shown in the agenda, which has been made available. Staff and public are reminded that this meeting is open. Doors to the meeting room are to be left open unless the meeting moves into a closed or confidential session, according to Section 14 of the Code of Meeting Practice. Only if the meeting moves into a closed or confidential session will the public broadcasting of the meeting be suspended. Council's Code of Meeting Practice prohibits the electronic recording of meetings without the express permission of Council. Mobile phones must be turned to silent during the meeting. Disclosures of interest. Do any councillors have any interest to declare this evening? Okay, I'll take that as a no. Right, we'll move on to our next item, which is public participation on items of the agenda. We do have one speaker registered for tonight. We have Mr. Sonny Embleton from Guide Consulting in person, and this is on item ENV 022-23, report on submissions, Hurstville Civic Planning Proposal and DCP amendment. Mr. Embleton, if you're here, could you please come forward? I'll just remind you that you have a 3-minute limit. The first sound that you hear indicates you have 60 seconds remaining, and at the second sound, if you could please conclude your comments.
Thank you, Mayor and Councillors. I don't have a deputation to deliver tonight. We have had the benefit of briefing councillors on previous occasions. I'm here to answer any questions, but I'd also like to acknowledge the efforts of Meryl and her planning team in getting to where we are at the moment. We've worked very closely with the planning team, and I appreciate the professionalism that the planning team has provided along the way. So I just wanted to give that acknowledgement. So I'm here to answer any questions if there are any.
Thank you, Mr. Embleton. Perhaps the councillors, I think we'll just move on to the next item, if that's okay. We can probably deal with questions when we get to the item. Our next item on the agenda is the confirmation of minutes of the Environment and Planning Committee held on Monday the 8th of May, that they be adopted. So I call for a motion, please, to move those minutes. It's moved by Councillor Ambi Haperha and seconded by the Mayor. Thank you. I might just ask you, all those in favour? We don't have to go around the room for this. All those in favour? Anyone against? Okay, we'll declare that carried. Okay. Now, our first item on tonight's agenda, our first committee report, I should say, is ENB 018-23, Proposed Housekeeping Amendment to the Georges River Local Environment Plan 2021. What we have decided to do as of the last council meeting is to hear from a relevant council officer to give us a bit of an overview about the item, and then we'll call for a movender and seconder. So, Ms. Bishop, who's speaking on this tonight?
Ms. Porter.
Ms. Porter, if you could address us, thank you.
Yep, through you, Madam Chair. The report seeks Council's endorsement to forward a draft planning proposal containing 36 housekeeping amendments to the Department of Planning and Environment for a gateway determination. The scope of housekeeping changes is limited to administrative and minor housekeeping changes to the Georges River Local Environmental Plan 2021. As you may be aware, the Georges River LEP commenced in October 2021, replacing the former Hurstville and Cobra LEPs, and this is the first housekeeping amendment since its commencement. The objective of the PP is to amend the LEP to improve its operation and accuracy by correcting identified anomalies and inconsistencies to existing provisions and maps, updating property descriptions, and adding a new provision from the standard instrument LEP. The types of housekeeping amendments are categorised into instrument-only amendments, Schedule 5 environmental heritage amendments, map-only amendments, and amendments involving both the instrument and mapping. Amendment 1 is to Clause 4.4a, exceptions to floor space ratio for certain residential accommodation. It's required to simplify the formula as the site area divided by site area equals 1. So there is no change to the existing FSRs that apply to land within the LGA. Amendment 2 is inserting Clause 5.22, special flood considerations from the standard instrument LEP. Amendment 3 to Clause 6.3, stormwater management. It's proposed to delete the word practicable and replace with where required to align with Council's stormwater management policy. Amendment 4 is amending Clause 6.11, environmental sustainability, to delete the application of the clause to development that involves a change of use of an existing building. Amendment 5 is amending Clause 6.12, landscaped area, to clarify the applicability of the clause to certain developments and what constitutes landscaped area. Amendments 6 to 24 are all changes to Schedule 5 environmental heritage, whether updating property addresses and descriptions to align with the map data, and there is one update to the item name to reflect the significant components of the site. Amendments 25 to 29 include amendments to the land zoning map to align with the current and intended use of the land as a public reserve, as well as updating the land reservation acquisition map to remove the land from a number of sites which have already been acquired by the relevant acquisition authority. And amendments 30 to 36 amending the floor space ratio map in Clause 4.4b, exceptions to floor space ratio for non-residential uses. Here it's adding a non-residential floor space ratio of at least 1.5 to 1 to apply only within the Hurstville E2 commercial centre zone. Amending the additional permitted uses map, Clause 6.13, development in certain business zones, and Schedule 1, additional permitted uses to allow an additional permitted use for residential flat buildings along the Roberts Lane frontage in Hurstville to align with the existing DCP controls. Amending the additional permitted uses map in Schedule 1, use of certain land in Zone E1 to resolve a number of minor inconsistencies following the commencement of the Department's employment zones reform. Amending the land reservation acquisition map, additional permitted uses, land zoning map, and Schedule 1 additional permitted uses following a minor subdivision and realignment of lot boundaries at 5 and 5R Denman Street in Hurstville. Amending the heritage map in Schedule 5 for heritage listed properties following lot consolidation or subdivision. And finally, inserting an existing state heritage listed item, which is Thurlow House at 9 Stewart Crescent, Blakehurst, into Schedule 5 environmental heritage, which was inadvertently left off the schedule. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Porter. Councillors, do any of you have any questions for Ms. Porter or the Director?
Yes, I do. Thank you. Through the chair, I Not sure if this is going to be a question, but a suggestion. Fine. Fine. Okay, page 25 of the report. There's certain recommendations from the panel, and I direct your attention to I think it's paragraph 2 and 2B in red lettering. It indicates this clause applies to development on land referred to in subclause 3 involving, in part B says additions or external alterations where there is an increase in the footprint of the building. I take the point that, yeah, fair enough. In most cases, like for instance, the R3 and the R4 and the E2, if they're proposing to do an increase, normally it's a pretty substantial increase that needs to be. But when it comes to R2, which is single dwelling occupancies, many councils, and this has got to do with stormwater, so the impost on single dwelling occupancies for alteration additions is going to be pretty high, even if, let's say, for instance, they extend it by 2 or 3 or 4 square metres. So I'm suggesting possibly that, like, for instance, at Strathfield Council, because it's got a lot of clay, they expect you to do a stormwater management plan plus whatever's required for stormwater on your property only after 20 square metres of increase in site coverage. So I'm just thinking, so it wouldn't be too much of an impost on the single dwelling occupancies and their alterations and additions. I'm not talking about new houses, just the odd, it might be just 2 square metres that they increase it, because that then trigger a whole stormwater report. So I'd like your view on it, and could we be considering in that next to 2A, for instance, zone R2 low density residence, where the alterations and additions are in excess of, say, 20 square metres, or some other area that you think is appropriate?
Through you, Madam Chair, to the Mayor. Your question is a good one, Mr. Mayor, and the need for clarification. Rather than putting a provision in the LEP, which can be restrictive for the applicant and cause and trigger the path for approval, whether it's delegation or has to go to an LPP, I think it may be appropriate for us to explore providing that clarification as a type of note, or not, rather than a control within the stormwater policy itself. So I can make a commitment to you that we will, and to the committee, that we will provide that clarification to define addition or external alterations within the stormwater policy. And that's been confirmed by Mr. Frayne.
The other one is go to page 26, going on to 27 of the report. There is a little bit of confusion to many people with the changes of the nominations to the zones. For instance, the business zones and the industrial zones, which used to be B1, B2, B3, B4, B5, and the industrial zones were Iron 1, Iron 2, light industrial and high industrial, have now become employment zones. So you've got employment zone 1, E1, E2, E3, E4, and they all relate to the previous B1, B2. Now, for a long time now, I think we've been, every time you look up the LEP, there's a note there, so please note that the E1 is the E1, E2, E3 is their employment zones, and they correlate to various business zones in the past. Can we still further that clarification, because it is quite, people are actually designing buildings, etc. They remember B1, B2, B3, B4 as local centres, commercial centres, etc. So if we can keep that some sort of note at the beginning of the LEP or somewhere before they get on to the LEP.
Through you, Madam Chair, to the Mayor, as just to make the committee aware, the changes to these zonings was legislated through the state government. I might refer to Ms Lum. There is no issue with us putting clarification on our planning page that links to the LEP, that sort of makes the correlation of, you know, which zone goes with which zone translates to what. It may be there, but I'll just check with Ms Lum. If not, we can make that very clear on our planning control webpage.
Thank you.
Yeah, I believe we've actually amended the webpage. We've been updating it as we've gone through the process to inform people. I'll double check, but I'm pretty sure we've put a note on there to clarify. But yeah, I'll check.
Thank you.
Councillors, are there any other questions? Okay, if that's the case, could I have a mover and a seconder? Moved by Councillor Ambi Hay-Pahar, and would someone like to second that? Seconded by Councillor Marnie. Okay, we might need to go around the room, I think, Ms McKinley.
Mr Mayor, your vote, please.
For.
Madam Chair?
For.
Councillor Ambi Hay-Pahar? For. Councillor Marnie? For. Councillor Wang?
For.
It's unanimous.
Excellent, thank you. We'll declare that one carried and move on to our next item, which is ENB 019-23, adoption of Moore Reserve Plan of Management and Master Plan. And
we have Ms Singh. She will do an overview for you.
Ms Singh, if you wouldn't mind giving us an overview, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good evening, everyone. Through you, Madam Chair, I will provide a short commentary regarding item ANV 019-23, adoption of Moore Reserve Plan of Management and Master Plan. At its meeting on 27th March 2023, Council considered a report on the submissions received to the public exhibition of the Moore Reserve Plan of Management and Master Plan, and noted the submissions received and amendments proposed to the Plan of Management and Master Plan. Also, Council endorsed the minor alteration of the categorization of community land, being Lot B, DP 374610 from natural area to park natural area and part park as a result of the first public hearing. Council also endorsed to hold an additional public hearing to give effect to the altering of the categorization of community land, which is Part B, DP 374610 from natural area to park natural area and part park under the Local Government Act. This report provides the outcome of the second public hearing held by Council on 11th May 2023. As background, the parcel of land subject to the second public hearing has a total area of approximately 1100 square meters, which is 0.8% of the overall area of Moore Reserve. And this is shown in figure 3 of the report. The area in question is outlined red in this figure 3. In accordance with Council's resolution of March 2023, Council held an additional public hearing on 11th May into the alteration of the categorization of the community land. A single participant attended this public hearing. The participants' concerns related to their contention that the park boundary in the area of the existing car park and private properties along the southern end of West Crescent in the area of Lot B, DP 374610, which is outlined blue in the figure 3 of the report, is depicted incorrectly in the Plan of Management and the categorization plan. The participant also provided a written submission which resonated these concerns. It is noted that the reserve's far southeastern boundary, as shown in the amended Plan of Management and the included categorization plan, is correct, and there is no amendment or alteration required to the Plan of Management's categorization in this area. Both Council's online mapping system and the New South Wales Government's Spatial Information Exchange, which is 6 maps, demonstrate that the cadastral plan and data for the reserve boundary is correct. The subsequent public hearing report dated 24th May 2023 thus did not recommend any amendment or alteration to the plan of management's categorization in this area or to section 4.6 land categorization. And this is included in attachment 3 of the report, which includes the public hearing report. The draft plan of management and master plan have been updated following consideration of the issues raised in the submissions. There were 80 submissions discussed in detail in the March meeting and the outcomes of the 2 public hearings. As advised, Council considered these submissions received in March 2023. Minister's consent was also received on 27th April 2023 from the Department of Planning, Crown Lands, which is required prior to Council's adoption of the plan. This report recommends that the Moor Reserve Plan of Management, which is part of attachment 4 of this report, and the master plan, which has been provided as attachment 5 of the report, be adopted and finalized in accordance with the requirements of section 40 of the Local Government Act and section 3.23 of the Crown Lands Management Act. If Council resolves to adopt the amended draft Moor Reserve Plan of Management and Master Plan, the next steps will be as follows. The Moor Reserve Plan of Management and Master Plan will be forwarded to the Department of Planning, Crown Lands for information. Submitters will be advised of the adoption of the Plan of Management and Master Plan. The Plan of Management and Master Plan will be placed on Council's website, and Council will publish notice of its decision on its website within 28 days after the decision is made.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Singh. Councillors, do we have any questions before we go to a mover?
Yes, I do,
Mr. Mayor?
Madam Chair. I refer to page 429 of Appendix C. And on that, in that page, what we do have is, well, Appendix B and Appendix C deal with the former landfill contamination process and mitigation. My understanding is that the Moor Reserve was heavily contaminated with methane gas. That was during the time I was on, and I think Madam Chair might have been there too, but that was during the time we were on Cogra Council. A report was presented to us, and the council actually went ahead and did some sort of mitigation with capping with clay, etc. But that report, there was a draft remediation action plan on Moor Reserve that was produced in 2002. That was produced in 2002. From what it says in this report, there were 13 wells that were drilled straight through to the methane to monitor the methane. There's only 2 that remain based on this report. I'm just giving a little bit of background because I think it leads up to my question. It appears to me that I'm not sure what happened after 2002 and the remediation action plan. I know that the capping was put on, which based on this is 0.5 metre to 1.5 metres of clay. Do we have any further information of the situation after 2002 in the remediation action plan? Through the chair.
Through you, Madam Chair, to the Mayor. Look, this falls outside the plan of management, and has been dealt with. It is currently being dealt with by the Assets and Infrastructure team. Yes, you are correct that the former Cogra Council went into a voluntary remediation plan with the EPA, and that process has been moving pretty slowly over the years. We have, in the last sort of 12 months, we have reactivated that sort of discussion around what we need to do about monitoring and remediating the site. And that this has been managed by Mr. Heath. My understanding is that we have employed a consultant. A report has been done. That report has been audited, and there are a few more things that need to be tested before we can get a full picture of what is required to fully remediate the site. So So that audit and the redoing of the study or redoing of the testing, I understand may be done within the next sort of 6 to 12 months, but I will need to take that component on notice. And it may be worth, when I speak to Mr. Heath and Mr. Ladder, that we ask for some information to be provided to you through the council information bulletin to give you an update on where we're at with that reviewing and doing the testing for the site.
Right, thank you.
Okay.
That's right.
Thank you, Ms Bishop. Councillors, are there any further questions? No, could I call for a mover then?
The recommendation with an amendment.
Okay,
Madam
and
Chair. The recommendation is, as indicated, A, B, C, D, and E. I have a further amendment, and it's basically F, that the Director of Environment Planning is to amend the Management Action Plan as follows. I, under the leisure and recreational uses 6.43 dog walking and exercise actions, LRU6, include the text Stage 5 and 6 are only to proceed in the event that Council has considered a detailed report on the actual needs of dog owners and the impact of any proposed increase in the dog leash free central area on the community's needs for public recreational open space. And 2, delete the words to be slightly more than double its present size, and also delete this from the actual master plan diagram.
thanks,
That's
Mr
my
Mayor.
motion,
Can I
and
just
that's
ask you a question there? So you're adding that on to the end, yeah?
Sorry,
You're adding that amendment on to the end of the existing
That's right.
motion?
I'm adding that as F.
Okay. Would somebody like to second that motion and amendment? Once
Maybe
you've
I
had a
should
chance to read
clarify,
it.
Madam Chair, maybe I should clarify.
Okay.
Okay, I'll clarify so you understand what's happening. When you look through this master plan, this more reserve management plan and master plan, and then you go to looking at what the submissions are, you will find that under one section in here, which I've actually copied and separated out, you'll find dog management issues. And it goes from page 82 to page 89, 92. When you go through all that, you'll find that out of the 80 submissions that we actually got, 64 of them related to dog management. That's quite a lot of people concerned with what's happening with regards to dog management in the park. Now, when you actually look at the actual submissions, you will find that 23 submissions indicate they want to maintain the status quo. In other words, leave the dog off leash free area where it is. Don't extend it. Don't do anything more with it. 18 objected to any expansion and wanted more restrictions imposed. So out of the 64, 41 basically said, we want to maintain the status quo and we object to any expansion. So what I've done with the amendment is basically saying, I agree with what the council officers have done. I think pursuing a 6-stage adaptive management approach is excellent because it just goes from one stage to another. There's successive stages based on needs and whatever happens in the future. This could take 20 years before we get to 5 and 6. But I actually think 5 and 6 shouldn't be a given because it could be 15 to 20 years from now that we get to stage 5 and stage 6. And what you need to do is to consider how expanding that dog leash area is going to impact on the on the recreational needs and on the natural bushland and tree situation. So what I'm saying is, if we're getting to stage 5 and to stage 6, stop there, do an investigation as to the needs of the dog owners, and as to how those needs are going to impact on the natural, well, it's not really natural because we've got a whole layer of clay, but we've got a whole lot of trees there. We've got a whole lot of trees, we've got a whole lot of nature. So I'm just saying, just stop, reassess it, bring back a report. I'll probably be dead by then, but bring back a report and let the council decide how much more, how much less. You won't make it less, maintain the status quo. How much more planting is supposed to happen, what have you. In other words, let the councils decide, rather than it being a given that it's going to happen. That's my clarification.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillors, do you understand the intention of the amendment? Did you have a question, Councillor Money?
I should point out that I should have put in a disclosure just on this because, and thank you, Mr. Mayor, for reminding me that that planting around that dog park area was done by only flora and fauna, and I've actually helped in those some of those exercises down there. So yeah, if the dog park's expanded around that planted area, it's going to demolish a lot of the good work that's been done by volunteers. So I will put in disclosure just on that, non-significant, non-pecuniary. But yeah, I take on Mr. Mayor's points about the having a more detailed report carried out.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Marnie. So you'll submit that?
Yes.
Yep, thank you. Could I call for a seconder for this motion, please? Councillor Ambi Hapaha, you're happy to second that? Great. Is there any further discussion on this? Just before we put it to a vote, I did want to say thank you very much to the council officers involved in this. It's been a very long process. We know that it was sat on for a while in the department before it came back to us, and a lot of work has gone into it, a lot of consultation with the community, and we know that we're never going to make everybody happy, but I think we've made a lot of people happy with the detailed outcome that we have here. That's enough for me. Ms. McKinley, could we please go around the room?
Mr. Mayor, your vote, please.
For.
Madam Chair?
For.
Councillor Ambi Hapaha.
For.
Councillor Marnie.
For.
Councillor Wang.
For.
It's 5 votes for, unanimous.
Great, thank you. We'll declare that carried and move to our next item, which is ENV 020-23, Development and Building Department Functions and Services Metrics Report, Quarter 3, 2022-2023, and I believe that we're hearing from Mr. Frame. Thank you.
Through you, Madam Chair. Thank you. Essentially, this is the third quarter 2022-2023 report on the functions of the Development and Building Unit in terms of metrics. In terms of development applications submitted, we had 63 lodged, 87 determined, so we kept ahead with respect to that. The median assessment time has gone down somewhat from 138 days to 123 days, but that's something that we need to continue to work to improve. And as we speak, we have 229 applications outstanding, including 171 development applications, 57 modifications, and 1 review application. The key trend throughout the report with respect to development applications is the downturn in lodgements, which probably reflects broader economics confidence going forward in the industry, and that's something that's consistent across councils in Sydney at the moment, and probably across Australia. We have continued to work to fill the vacancies that we have got in the team. That's an ongoing process. It's slower than it's been any time I recall in my career, but that's fundamentally something we are working through. We are slowly filling those positions, and we expect that will assist us in continuing to work through the lodgement and the backlog of applications that are there. I suppose the one comment I'd have around that is we have had, as a consequence, a number of applications that have probably had not the best ride through the system. There's a number of those we've identified that had a couple of assessment officers. So we're trying to look at folks, targeting those and focusing on those to move them along. In terms of building information certificates, we continue to work through that. That's, as you may know from past reports, there was a very large backlog of these at one time. The building certification team has worked hard on that, and they've brought them down to an average 217 days, down from 557 days some time ago. And that's something that we have to continue to work on. One thing that has changed in that space, as I mentioned a couple of quarters ago, is that more building information certificates are now lodged due to changes with respect to what the courts have decided what modifications can and can't do. So it means that as a consequence, for any works that are carried out before you have a modification application, you need a building application for that instead. So there is a steady ongoing need for those, and that team is continuing to work through them. Not much to say in terms of CDCs and complying development certificates and construction certificates, except to say that council's market share remains steady but quite low in the overall industry, which, given the way those operate, is not all that surprising. In terms of our advisory team, probably this, but just like the development applications, the scale and the volume of pre-lodgement applications is lower than it has been, and the type of them is smaller, but that remains steady in terms of they're still coming in, but mostly for smaller residential things rather than large developments, which again I'd expect to continue for a little while given the interest rates and everything else in the economy. The unit overall continues to operate and work through, and that's essentially where we're trying to do. And as we bring on more people, we'd hope to see that we can start to move ahead and give some of those customers a bit of a better service through the process. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Frame, and thank you for putting together this report. It's always very comprehensive. Very busy department you have, and thank you for including all of this information. Councillors, do we have any questions of Mr. Frame or the Director? No? Okay, could I call for a motion, please?
I'll move the recommendation with a Part B, and it's a simple Part B. Council commends the Director of Environment and Planning and the staff implementing actions to achieve a magnificent reduction. I was going to say significant, but I think magnificent is appropriate. A magnificent reduction in the backlog of development applications. And I'll just make a couple of comments, Madam Chair.
I'll just call for a second. Would somebody like to second this item? Councillor Marnie, seconding. Thank you.
Yeah, just quickly, I must admit, in reading this report and having a good look at what's happening and reading between the lines, I do believe that the manager and the director have done a really good job in pulling back some of the backlog. You've got to look at the statistics there. I understand that there are a lesser number of development applications that have been put in, but it gave the opportunity, because they're sort of rushing around trying to do all sorts of things, it gave the opportunity to the manager and the director to pull back, to actually get rid of that backlog. So you can see that in July, August, September, this is on page 58, July, August, September and October, they had something like 194 applications, and it was pretty good for them to actually deal with 176. This was 2022, but in 2023, in the same period, I'm not talking about the last quarter, in the same period they had 62, and they've managed to deal with 91, and they've actually gotten rid of some of the backlog. And if you look at the graphs, the red line, which indicates the number which were determined, is, unless you've got the colours wrong, which I hope not, but the red line indicates what was determined, and the red line is far above the blue line, which is what was lodged. Then the other thing that I'd like to bring to you, they've actually been working under significant extenuating circumstances. You go to paragraph 13, and it's sort of a polite way of saying we're under a lot of pressure, but we think we can do the job. And it says in paragraph, provided current staffing levels can be maintained. But you've got to read on, and it says, and principal planners, senior development assessment planner, fast track planner, and student planner positions are filled. So they're missing, I don't know, you're missing something like 5 positions, and you still managed to do this, which I think is extremely commendable. And I think you can send that message to your staff for doing such a good job, a really good job in pulling it all back. And thank you for doing that, because I've had a lot of feedback from the community in the past. So great, thank you for that. That's all I wanted to say.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Any other questions or comments? Okay, we might move to move it if we could. Thank you.
Your vote, please, Mr. Mayor. Madam Chair.
4.
Councillor Amby Haferhahn.
For.
Councillor Marnie.
For.
Councillor Wang.
4.
It's 5 votes for, unanimous.
Okay, thank you. We'll declare that one carried and move on to our next item, which is ENB 021-23, review of stormwater management policy. And I believe, Mr. Frame, you're up again. Thank you.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. This essentially relates to Council's Stormwater Management Manual, which is a document that was adopted in July 2021 to essentially govern the approach to stormwater management with respect to private land, where applications and development proposals come through as part of a development application or a complying development certificate. So it essentially relates to new buildings on private land and how they manage their stormwater or how they respond to flood risks. As part of the original resolution, a review of a stormwater policy was required within 3 years, and simply that was because operationally, when you start to apply these policies, you start to find things that need attention, need rectification, and as a consequence of that, that's essentially where this review has come from. The process involved development of an issues list as the engineers worked their way through it, as the application of issues arose. It involved getting insights from problem matters where we had challenged resolving some difficult stormwater issues on certain properties, as well as consultation with the various stormwater and flood specialists across council, and using their knowledge to see what could be added and what could be improved with respect to this policy. There's 40 changes proposed. I won't run through each and every one of them because I think I might put us all to sleep, but essentially I will summarise what the key issues are. Not a great deal of them are to do with typographical errors or corrections or slight rephrasings, just to clarify what the policy means. But some key issues around practical application were with respect to the applicability of on-site detention and dual occupancies. The current policy is unclear as to whether the discretionary provisions that relate to dwelling houses should apply to dual occupancies, and that was not the intention. So that's been clarified to say that dual occupancies must provide on-site detention. There's also a tightening up of absorption trench provisions, and that relates to where you can't get to a pipe and you have to have a pit in the backyard and your soil needs to absorb the water. There's only parts of the city that actually have the right soil profile to really make that work, and there was provisions previously that allowed that to be information to be submitted to try to prove that other areas of the city that could occur, but in practice that just is not realistic. So in order to make it simpler for consultants and for the community, we've basically clarified that you can't do absorption outside certain areas. There's increased detailing around the sort of stormwater modelling tools to be used and the sort of way they're to be set up for council to assess. There's updated references to old outdated policies and Australian standard references that need tidying up, and tightening up with wording with respect to the applicability of the policy to complying development certificates, because there was a little bit of looseness in some of the language. And essentially, that's the summary. If adopted, this would be notified for a period of 28 days, and we would then carry out some industry consultation on with respect to the changes. And essentially, that's what the recommendation says, and that would be the next step. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Frame. And once again, a very comprehensive and detailed report. Councillors, do you have any questions of Mr. Frame or the Director? No? Okay. Would somebody like to move it?
Second.
Councillor Amby Haferhahn, you'd like to move it? Would somebody second that?
Yeah, I'll second it, Madam Chair.
Okay, seconded by the Mayor. And we might go around the room, please, Ms. McKinley.
Could I just make a comment,
Yep.
Madam Chair? I'll just make a quick comment. I've got to say I'm pretty astounded by it. And don't take that as a criticism, take it as a compliment. I probably, in my architecture career, have never seen a stormwater manual, I call it a manual, stormwater manual as detailed and as, I say complex, but in a good way. Because some people might say, oh, well, this is going to go out to the industry, and the industry is going to say, they've got so many risks. No. What it does, it provides serious and significant clarification as to the rules that they've got to abide by. if you talk to a stormwater engineer, the first thing you'll find, in some cases, not in all cases, I don't know what the council wants. I give them this, they give me something else. The stormwater engineer on council is awfully confused, and he or she contradicts what they're saying every time I ring them. This sets it in stone, in concrete, whatever you like. Everything that you wanted to know about stormwater and what the parameters are for this council is there. I mean, you've got to look at, I mean, I'm particularly impressed by what they say on the charged stormwater pipe system. It's very clear. That's page 77, 78. He's also got a section on energy dissipation, which will probably interest Councillor Marnie. Energy dissipation infrastructure for outlets into natural bushland, which I thought was something new, which I thought was really good. Which basically saying that you don't just let it go and erode, you actually spread it out in simple terms. And of course, there were many other pages where I just sort of like a good novel, not novel, but a good technical manual that you can't put down. Well done, and thank you. I know, I read the pink pages sometimes, but I get
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Ms. McKinley, would you mind going around the room, please?
Mr. Mayor, your vote, please. Madam Chair.
4.
Councillor Amby Haverhart.
4.
Councillor Marnie.
4.
Councillor Wang.
4.
5 votes for, unanimous.
Thank you, and we'll declare that one carried. And moving on to our final item for tonight, ENV 022-23, report on submissions, Hurstville Civic Planning Proposal and DCP amendment. And I think, Ms. Lom, we're just going to hear, councillors, we're just going to hear an overview from Ms. Lom tonight. Thank you.
Thanks, Madam Chair. So the Hurstville Civic Planning Proposal seeks to enable the future redevelopment of the existing Hurstville Civic Precinct for a mixed-use civic, cultural, commercial and residential destination. The planning proposal seeks to amend the Georges River LEP 2021 to rezone the site to MU1 mixed use, increase the height to 20 metres, 30 metres and 60 metres, increase the FSR to 3:1, 5:1 and 7:1, reclassify 4 to 6 Dora Street to operational land, retain the Heritage Art and Hurstville Museum and Gallery by including it on the heritage map in the schedule, and identifying 2 Patrick Street and Part Patrick Street Road Reserve as Area B on the additional permitted use map, and permitting the use of residential flat buildings in the schedule. Excluding the application of clause 6.13, development in zones E1 and MU1 to Area B, and introducing a local provision to allow community facilities and public benefits on the site, including a minimum floor area for community uses and minimum sunlight to the Civic Plaza. A site-specific draft DCP amendment has also been prepared to accompany the planning proposal, and this provides built form and design provisions to guide the future redevelopment of the site. The planning proposal and accompanying DCP amendment were a public exhibition from 18th of January to 17th of February 2023. In regards to the public exhibition, we received 12 community submissions, 4 state government agency submissions and 1 local government agency submission. Of the submissions, 6 supported the planning proposal with amendments, 4 remained neutral, with or without suggesting amendments, and 7 objected to the proposal for reasons including demolition of the Baptist Church, traffic, parking, amenity, and lack of public space. A public hearing was also held on the 30th of March, and this related to the proposed reclassification of 4 to 6 Dora Street from community to operational land. 1 verbal submission was received, which related to the removal of the remembrance plaque on the northern wall of the Baptist Church. In response to these submissions, it's recommended that the exhibited planning proposal be amended to insert additional wording within the site-specific additional local provision of the LEP, clarifying how the site area is calculated and how the minimum and maximum gross floor area requirements for the various components of the proposal are calculated under the clause. It's also recommended that the exhibited DCP amendment be amended to require the preservation of the memorial plaque at the Baptist Church and its incorporation within the redevelopment of the site in the future, Include a provision for the required traffic impact assessment and car parking study to address multimodal traffic assessment, and include a provision for the required traffic impact assessment to identify active transport links to existing school travel paths. So in summary, the report recommends that the exhibited planning proposal be amended and forwarded to the Department of Planning for gazettal, and the exhibited DCP amendment be amended and adopted by Council. The DCP will be effective when the amendment to the LP is gazetted. Yeah. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Ms Lum. And councillors, I'd also like to introduce you to Mr Stuart Gordon, sitting over here on the end. He is from SJB Consulting, and he has been working closely with Ms Lum and Ms Bishop's department on this particular matter for quite some time. Do any of you have any questions for either Ms Lum or Mr Gordon? No? Okay. I will call for a mover. Moved by the Mayor.
Yeah.
Councillor Katras, is there a seconder? Councillor Ambi Hapahar is the seconder.
I'd like to say a few words, if that's okay, Madam Chair. Look, what am I going to say? I'm going to say I'm rather excited by this, and I'll tell you why I'm very excited by this. Is because it's been going since 2018. It's been going backwards and forwards, and I feel that in actual fact you've arrived at something that will provide a heart and a fulcrum to the Hullsville Town Centre. When you really look at the urban design resolution of this, in terms of blocks of buildings, etc., you'll find that allowances have been made for solar penetration where it's required. We've got a huge area of pedestrian activity, which is a plaza type area. We've got a lot of community facilities that are being proposed in this, and I really think that when you look at it and you look at the three-dimensional views of the urban design resolution of this, really actually provides something unique to the heart of Hurstville. And it gives it identity, it gives it a nucleus, it makes it pedestrian friendly, it's friendly to, I mean, yeah, you do have towers, but the towers, the whole island block is surrounded by towers and will be surrounded by towers. But at the same time, the spacing of these towers, the space and the dimensions between the towers are quite phenomenal. It's really, I think it's probably an urban design, in my view, masterpiece, and I congratulate the staff and everybody that's been involved in it. Can I say, also, it appears to me that when you look at the submissions that we've got 12 community submissions, 12. 6 of them support the proposal, 4 are neutral, which means virtually 4 out of the 12, and 7 object. Now, I turn you to page 285, where the council officers have provided an analysis of the objections. There's only 1 objection to height and floor space ratio, 1. So I think that's an amazing result in such a complex proposal. I really believe having only 1 objection on the loss of amenity from increased height and floor space ratio, and that's on page 285, is quite good, and congratulations on achievement. I suggest we move well ahead, move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Would anybody else like to make any comments? Ms. Bishop, you wanted to have a word?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to make a couple of comments, and thank you, Mr. Mayor, for acknowledging the work that has been done. Yes, we have been on an incredibly long journey, as I say, with Kathy McMahon and her team, but I'd also like to thank the gentlemen you heard tonight, Sunny and Helen from Guide, as well as they have gone on this journey with us and have brought on a team of consultants to make sure, in particular, the placement of the buildings and the urban design and how it works within the context. As Sunny has indicated, that has been a process of collaboration between us and the applicant, but also the Department of Planning. They have had a role in this as well. So, and also not to underestimate the role of the council in having faith and endorsing the master plan and seeing the vision of where this site could go and what it could do for the town centre. So I thank you.
Thank you, Ms Bishop. Any further comments, councillors? Okay, if you'll just indulge me, I just would like to say I too would like to acknowledge all of the work that has gone into this with Ms Bishop and her staff and the consultants that are here tonight. However, from a personal perspective, I've never supported this project due to its scale, and I don't want to just strictly vote against it just to be negative about it. It's just from my perspective, I can't support the scale of it, but I do acknowledge what the vision of this is, and I acknowledge all of the work that has gone into it. I'm not seeking to influence anyone else's vote on that. This is just from my personal perspective. So just following that, Ms McKinley, if you could go around the room. Thank you.
Your vote, please, Mr. Mayor. Madam Chair.
Abstain.
Councillor Amby Hapaha.
For.
Councillor Marnie.
For.
Councillor Wang.
For.
4 votes for, 1 against.
Thank you. We will declare that one carried. And that brings us to an end of this meeting. Thank you everybody for your attendance. Thank you to the staff who've assisted in putting this meeting together and all of the work that has gone on to put the agenda together. We'll close the meeting at 7:57 p.m. Have a good evening.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.